Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Daniel Rourke rubbed his eyes as the clock on his laptop hit 3:17 a.m. The blue light from his screen cast shadows across his unshaven face. For the third night this week, he'd barely moved from his home office. The house was silent except for the soft hum of his computer and the occasional ping of a new message. He scrolled through lines of code, searching for the bug that had crashed their latest SynMine prototype. 3 years of work, millions in funding, and they were still hitting walls. He took a swig of cold coffee and grimaced. The sound of keys in the front door broke his concentration. Footsteps followed, unsteady and accompanied by a soft laugh. Amber was home. Daniel saved his work and stepped into the hallway. "Hey," he said. "Didn't expect you back so late." Amber jumped slightly, hand flying to her chest. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled despite the hour, her makeup still flawless. "God, you scared me. Why are you still up?" "Working. The neural network keeps crashing when we push past certain parameters." He noticed her slightly glassy eyes, the faint smell of expensive whiskey. "How was your business dinner?" "Productive." She slipped off her coat. "Jack's team has some amazing ideas for our next campaign. We might have celebrated a bit too much." Daniel nodded. Jack Blythe. The name alone made something tighten in his chest. "You've been having a lot of meetings with him lately." "He's a major client, Daniel." Amber's voice cooled. "Unlike your startup, his company actually makes money." The barb found its mark. Daniel let it sit between them, another small crack in the foundation. "I'm going to bed," Amber said after a moment. "Don't stay up all night again. You look terrible." She brushed past him, leaving a trail of perfume that wasn't the one he'd bought her for their anniversary. Daniel stood in the hallway long after her bedroom door closed. Not their bedroom. Hers. He'd been sleeping in the guest room for months now, claiming late work hours. They both knew it was more than that. When Daniel finally returned to his desk, a new email waited in his inbox. Jack Blythe, 3:26 a.m. Subject line, next steps. Why was Jack emailing his wife's work partner at this hour? Daniel's finger hovered over the mouse, tempted to open it. Instead, he closed his laptop. Some questions had answers you weren't ready to face. The SynMine office occupied half a floor in a glass and steel building downtown. Not impressive by tech standards, but Daniel had fought hard for every square foot. Now, surrounded by whiteboards covered in algorithms and the soft clicking of keyboards, he felt a rare moment of peace. "These response times are garbage," Raj, his lead engineer, said from across the table. "If we push this to beta, we'll get slaughtered." "We need more processing power," Daniel replied. "The algorithm works in theory, but we're hitting hardware limitations." "Where the algorithm needs work," Raj countered. "No offense, boss, but I think we're approaching this from the wrong angle." Daniel leaned back, considering. This was why he'd hired Raj. He wasn't afraid to push back. "Show me your alternative." As Raj pulled up his diagrams, Daniel's phone buzzed with a calendar alert. Meeting with Prestige Capital in 30 minutes. Their best shot at a new funding round. "Keep working on this," Daniel told the team. "I need to prep for the investor meeting." In his office, Daniel changed into the navy suit jacket hanging on his door. He'd prepared these pitch slides for weeks, refining every detail. SynMine's AI security tools were revolutionary if they could just get the funding to complete development. His phone rang. The screen showed Amber's face, a photo from happier times. "Hey," he answered. "Are you at the office?" Her voice sounded odd tight. "Yeah, heading out for the Prestige Capital meeting in a few minutes." "Everything okay?" A pause. "That's what I'm calling about. They call my office looking for you." Daniel frowned. "Why would they call you?" "They said they've been trying to reach you." "The meeting's canceled." Something about a scheduling conflict. His stomach dropped. "That's impossible. I confirmed yesterday." "Well, they're not meeting with you today." Her tone turned sharp. "Maybe check your email more often." Daniel pulled up his inbox. Nothing from Prestige Capital. "That's strange. I didn't get any notification." "Well, I've done my part by telling you." "I have to go, Jack, and I have a client presentation in 10 minutes. The call ended before he could respond. Daniel stared at his phone, then checked his spam folder. Nothing there either. Something didn't add up, that he dialed Prestige Capital directly. This is Angela from Prestige Capital. Angela, this is Daniel Rourke from SinMind. I understand our meeting today was canceled. A pause. Mr. Rourke? I'm not showing any meeting scheduled with you, canceled or otherwise. Daniel's grip tightened on the phone. I've been emailing with Mark Thompson for weeks. We confirmed a pitch meeting for today at 2 p.m. Mr. Thompson no longer works here. He left 3 weeks ago. Who have you been communicating with? I spread through Daniel's veins. He thanked Angela and hung up, then pulled up his email exchanges with Mark. The address wasn't from the Prestige Capital domain, but from a generic email provider, just similar enough to miss if you weren't looking carefully. Someone had been stringing him along. But why? Daniel pulled into his driveway at 7:13 p.m., his mind still racing from the fake investor discovery. The house lights were on, unusual for this time of evening when Amber was typically still at work. He found her in the living room, perched on the edge of the sofa with a glass of red wine. A manila folder sat on the coffee table. Something about her posture made him pause in the doorway. "You're home early," he said. "Sit down, Daniel." Her voice was controlled, almost rehearsed. "We need to talk." He sat across from her, the coffee table between them like neutral territory. "Is this about the weird Prestige Capital situation? Because something's strange. This isn't about your company." She slid the folder toward him. "It's about us. Or rather, the end of us." Daniel stared at the folder, but didn't open it. "What is this?" "Divorce papers. I've already signed my part." The words hit like a physical blow. Despite everything, the separate bedrooms, the growing silences, the subtle jabs, he hadn't expected this. Not today. Not like this. "Why now?" he asked, his voice hollow. Amber took a sip of wine. "Because I'm done pretending. We've been over for a long time, Daniel. You know that. And you couldn't have talked to me first? Before lawyers? Would have changed anything?" When he didn't answer, she continued. "I met someone. Actually, reconnected is more accurate." Daniel's throat tightened. "Jack." She didn't look surprised that he knew. "Yes. We've been together for almost a year now." Almost a year. The timeline clicked into place. The late meetings. The weekend business trips. The perfume. "We just connected again," Amber said, studying her wine glass. "He sees me. Really sees me. When was the last time you looked up from your code long enough to do that?" Daniel didn't answer. He finally opened the folder. Standard divorce papers, until he reached page 8. His eyes locked on a section highlighting SinMind. "What is this?" His voice sharpened. "Why is SinMind listed in our joint assets?" Amber set down her glass. "Because it is. I own half the company." "That's not possible. You've never been part of SinMind." She pulled another document from her bag. "This says otherwise. Your signature, dated 18 months ago, adding me as a co-owner with 50% equity." Daniel snatched the paper. His signature looked real, but he'd never signed this. Then he remembered the stack of documents she'd asked him to sign during tax season last year, when he was pulling all-nighters before product launch. "You tricked me into signing this." His hands were shaking now. "This is fraud. It's legally binding," she replied calmly. "My lawyer has confirmed it. Jack helped me understand what I was entitled to." "Jack?" "Of course." "So this was the plan? String me along while you and Jack set this up?" "There was no plan, Daniel. Not at first." Her voice softened slightly. "But when things developed with Jack, he helped me see I deserved more from this marriage than being ignored while you chase your tech dreams." "And what about my dreams? What about everything I've built?" "You'll get a settlement. 20% of current valuation, paid over 5 years." She looked at him directly now. "That's generous, considering." "Considering what?" "Considering I could push for everything. The house is already in my name. Your company is half mine. Your accounts are nearly empty from pouring everything into SinMind." She paused. "I'm being kind, Daniel. Kind." The word hung in the air between them, grotesque in its wrongness. Daniel stood up. "I need to call my lawyer." "I wouldn't," Amber said. "The papers include a non-disclosure agreement. If you fight this, if you talk to anyone about our arrangement, a certain investor group will receive documentation of unregistered AI training methods SinMind has been using." Daniel froze. "You wouldn't." "Jack has friends at the Regulatory Commission." She took another sip of wine. "Your choice." sign and walk away with something, or fight and lose everything. The trap was perfect. He stood no chance. Daniel looked around at the home they'd shared for 8 years, her decorating taste, her furniture, her life that he'd somehow become a stranger in. "I'll need time to review these," he said finally. "You have until morning." Amber stood. "I'll be staying at Jack's tonight. When I come back tomorrow, I expect those papers signed." She walked to the door, then turned back. "Oh, I'll be taking Zeus. Jack has a big yard, and you know how Zeus loves to run. Their golden retriever, the dog Daniel had rescued as a puppy before he even met Amber. His last connection to his life before her. After she left, Daniel sat alone in the silent house. The divorce papers spread across the table. Everything he'd built, everything he'd fought for, taken in one swift move by the woman he'd once promised his life to. By morning, he'd signed the papers. By afternoon, he'd packed his few remaining possessions into his car. All that remained was $200 in his wallet, a suitcase of clothes, and his laptop. As he pulled away from the house, he caught sight of Jack's luxury SUV turning onto the street. Daniel didn't slow down. There was nothing left for him here. The highway stretched endlessly ahead as Daniel drove west out of San Francisco. The sun was setting behind him, casting long shadows across the dashboard. His phone had been buzzing all day. Raj and other team members wondering where he was, why he wasn't at the emergency board meeting Amber had called. He silenced it without answering. What could he say? That he'd been played? That he'd lost everything because he'd been too absorbed in his work to notice his wife and her lover dismantling his life piece by piece. The GPS directed him south towards Austin. He had no plan beyond getting distance between himself and the wreckage of his former life. 4 days and 3 cheap motels later, Daniel pulled into Austin. The tech scene here was growing, but still small enough that he might find anonymity. He found a diner and opened his laptop, searching rental listings he could afford on his dwindling cash. Most were out of his price range. But one caught his eye: a backroom rental in a private home. Utilities included, $600 monthly. The listing included one blurry photo of a cluttered garage workshop and the words "serious technical minds only, no partiers." Daniel sent a message and received an almost immediate response. "Available now. 1478 Westridge Drive. Ask for Benny." The house sat at the end of a quiet street, an older single-story ranch with peeling paint and a yard filled with strange metal sculptures. Daniel parked and approached the front door, wondering if this was a mistake. He knocked. No answer. He tried again. "Back door." A gruff voice called from somewhere around the side of the house. Daniel followed the voice to a side entrance that opened directly into a garage workshop. The space was filled with electronic equipment, half-assembled devices, and tools covering every surface. At a workbench sat an older man with wild gray hair and a soldering iron in hand. "You the room guy?" The man didn't look up from his work. "Yes, I'm Daniel." "Don't care what your name is," the man interrupted. "I'm Benny. Rooms through there, bathroom shared, kitchen access from 6 to 8 morning and evening. No guests, no noise after 10, no touching my equipment without permission." Benny finally looked up, narrowing his eyes. "You running from something?" Daniel hesitated. "What makes you say that?" "Nobody answers my ad unless they're desperate or hiding. Sometimes both." Benny set down his soldering iron. "I don't care what it is as long as it doesn't bring cops to my door." "No cops," Daniel assured him. "Just needed a change." Benny studied him for a moment longer, then nodded. "Rent's due first of the month, cash only. First and last month up front." Daniel counted out $1,200 from his remaining cash. "What are you working on?" he asked, nodding toward the device on Benny's workbench. "Signal interceptor," Benny replied. "Government's always listening. This scrambles their algorithms." He squinted at Daniel. "You know tech?" "Some," Daniel admitted. "I work in AI. Artificial intelligence," Benny scoffed. "Nothing artificial about it. Intelligence is intelligence, whether it comes from flesh or silicon." He turned back to his work. "Room's that way. There's a hot plate if you need it." The room was small, barely fitting a twin bed and desk, but it was clean. A single window looked out onto the yard of metal sculptures. Daniel set down his suitcase and sat on the bed. This was his life now. A back room in a paranoid old man's house. He pulled out his laptop and opened it. Time to start over. 2 weeks passed in a blur of job applications and rejections. Daniel's resume, even stripped of his founder status at SinMind, made him overqualified for basic programming jobs and suspicious to companies who wondered why a senior AI engineer would apply for junior positions. One evening, as he sat at his small desk applying for his 20th job that day, a knock came at his door. "Enter," he called. Benny pushed the door open, a can of beer in each hand. He tossed one to Daniel. "You look like hell." Daniel caught the beer. "Thanks for noticing. Been watching you come and go. Job hunting ain't working out, is it?" Daniel took a swig from the can. "Not exactly." Benny leaned against the doorframe. "What's your real story? Nobody with your skills should be struggling this bad, unless there's something else going on." Daniel hesitated, then decided he had nothing left to lose. "I co-founded an AI company. My wife cheated with my business rival. Then they conspired to push me out. Took everything. I signed an NDA as part of the divorce, so I can't even explain the gap in my employment history." Benny whistled low. "That's a special kind of screwed." He studied Daniel for a moment. "Ever consider not being Daniel Rourke for a while?" "What do you mean?" "New identity. Not legally that brings heat, but professionally. Start freelancing under a different name. Build a portfolio nobody can connect to your past." Daniel considered it. "I need clients. I know people," Benny said. "Worked for DARPA for 20 years before retiring. Still got contacts who need discreet technical work." He took a long pull from his beer. "What's your specialty?" "AI security systems. Natural language processing. Neural networks." Benny nodded thoughtfully. "Could be useful. I got a friend working on a project that might need your skills. Pays cash, no questions asked." "Is it legal?" Daniel asked. "Legal enough," Benny replied with a shrug. "Government contract work that needs to stay off official channels. Nothing that'll hurt anybody." Daniel weighed his options, which were few. "I'm in, but I'll need a new laptop. Mine might be trackable through my old company accounts." Benny grinned. "Now you're thinking. Got a spare rig you can use. Clean system, no backdoors." He raised his beer can. "To new beginnings, whatever name you choose." Daniel clinked his can against Benny's. "To new beginnings." 3 months later, Cal Ricks had established himself as a reliable freelance AI consultant. The name had come to Daniel while staring at a bottle of calcium supplements in a drugstore, Cal for short, with Ricks sounding technical enough to be memorable but not unusual enough to stand out. His first job through Benny had led to 3 more, each paying in cash and asking no questions about his background. Daniel kept his head down, lived frugally, and poured every spare dollar and minute into a new project in the quiet hours of night. Fueled by cheap coffee and determination, he crafted the foundation of something he called Spectre. More than just an AI security system, Spectre could optimize entire networks, learning and adapting to threats in real dash time. IT was light years beyond what SinMind had been building. Every line of code he wrote was an act of defiance, a promise to himself that he would rise again. One night, as he worked in Benny's garage with permission to use some of the older man's equipment, Benny wandered in with 2 mugs of something stronger than coffee. "Making progress?" Benny asked, sliding one mug toward Daniel. Getting there, Daniel replied, taking a sip. The liquid burned his throat. "Definitely not coffee. I need better hardware to test the neural pathways properly." "Might be able to help with that," Benny said. "Got a friend with access to some processing power. For the right price." Daniel had been saving every penny. "How much?" "Not money. She needs help with some security patches. Her system got compromised last month." Benny's eyes twinkled. Veda Lynn, brilliant mind, had her own cybersecurity firm until some venture capital vultures stripped it for parts. He paused. "Sound familiar?" Daniel's interest piqued. "Very. When can I meet her?" "Tomorrow. She's coming by to pick up a signal jammer I fixed for her." Benny studied Daniel's code on the screen. "She doesn't trust easily. Neither should you." "I don't," Daniel replied. "Not anymore." The next day, Daniel met Veda Lynn, a sharp-featured woman with calculating eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She listened to his proposal, asked pointed technical questions that proved her expertise, and eventually nodded. I'll help you with the processing power, she said, in exchange for your security patches and 20% of whatever you're building. Daniel considered. 15% and your name stays off the paperwork until we go public. 17 and I get consulting credit under a pseudonym. Daniel extended his hand. Deal. As they shook on it, Veda's grip was firm. Benny says you got screwed over by your partners. Wife and her lover, Daniel corrected. They took my company. Veda's eyes hardened. Then we have something in common. I don't tolerate snakes either. She picked up her bag. Send me your code tonight. We start tomorrow. As she left, Benny chuckled. She likes you. How can you tell? Daniel asked. She didn't call you an idiot once. For Veda, that's practically a Valentine. With Veda's help, Spectre began to take shape faster than Daniel had hoped. Her network connections led them to Tyrese Langdon, a former tech ethics professor with a grudge against the venture capital world that had blacklisted him for exposing fraudulent practices. The three formed an unlikely alliance. Daniel provided the technical vision, Veda the cybersecurity framework, and Tyrese the ethical grounding that would keep them from becoming what they despised. They worked under the radar, with Daniel maintaining his Cal Ricks identity. Together, they established Centaurus Incorporated, with Tyrese as the public face, Veda as the security expert, and Cal Ricks as the mysterious lead developer who never attended meetings in person. 6 months after being forced out of his own company, Daniel Rourke had transformed into someone new, someone focused, someone dangerous. As he coded late into the night, he kept a small news alert for mentions of Sin Mind, Amber Rourke, or Jack Blythe. He told himself it was strategic intelligence gathering. But deep down, he knew he was watching for signs of their inevitable fall. He wouldn't push them. He wouldn't have to. People like that eventually destroyed themselves. He just needed to be ready when the opportunity came. And he would be. The warehouse space that served as Centaurus headquarters hummed with activity. Daniel, now fully inhabiting his Cal Rick persona, hunched over 3 monitors, debugging a particularly stubborn section of code. Around him, the small team they'd assembled worked with quiet intensity. Cal, Veda called from across the room. Check your inbox. New problem with the kernel optimization. Daniel pulled up his email without looking away from his code. On it, 4 hours of sleep had become his norm. Vending machine snacks and energy drinks sustained him through 18-hour workdays. His body had adapted to the deprivation, finding efficiency in necessity. Even his appearance had transformed. He'd grown a short beard and cut his hair closer, embracing the physical changes that separated him from his former self. Tyrese pushed through the door, coffee carrier in hand. Good news and better news, he announced, distributing cups to the team. Good news. Our processing capacity just doubled. Better news. Our first major client is ready to sign. Daniel looked up. Which one? Blue Shield Data. They're tired of ransomware attacks and won our protection yesterday. This was the breakthrough they needed. Blue Shield handled medical records for 30% of hospitals nationwide. Their endorsement would open doors across the healthcare sector. Terms. Veda asked, ever practical. 3-year contract, 7 figures, with expansion options. Tyrese grinned. They want installation to begin next week. The team erupted in cheers. Daniel allowed himself a small smile. Spectre was working, and word was spreading. 6 months of relentless work was beginning to pay off. Later that night, after most of the team had left, Daniel remained at his station. Tyrese pulled up a chair beside him. You should celebrate too, Tyrese said. This is happening because of you. Daniel shook his head. Because of us. All of us. Still, you're pushing harder than anyone. Even Veda is telling you to ease up, and that woman practically lives on caffeine and spite. Daniel's fingers continued typing. I can't ease up. Not yet. Tyrese studied him. This isn't just about building something new for you, is it? It's about what you lost. Daniel's hands stilled on the keyboard. Does it matter? It matters if revenge is driving you more than innovation. Tyrese leaned closer. Look, Cal, or whoever you really are, I respect your privacy. We all have secrets. But burning yourself out won't help anyone. I'm not burning out, Daniel insisted. I'm getting stronger. Tyrese sighed. Just remember why we started this. To build something better than what's out there. not just to settle scores. After Tyrese left, Daniel opened a private browser window and searched for recent news about SinMind. The company had been making headlines, but not the kind investors appreciated. Reports of aggressive expansion under new leadership, followed by customer complaints about data privacy violations. That a photo accompanied one article. Jack Blythe at a tech conference, arm around Amber's waist, both smiling for the cameras. Daniel stared at the image, at the diamond on Amber's finger that hadn't been there when she handed him divorce papers. He closed the browser and returned to his code. Tyrese was wrong. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. The Centaurus office had moved to a proper building downtown with actual furniture and equipment that didn't look salvaged. Success had come quickly once Blue Shield signed on. 3 more major clients followed, then a dozen smaller ones. Spectre was proving itself in the field, adapting and learning faster than competing security systems. Daniel sat in his private office, reviewing quarterly numbers with Veda. His workspace remained Spartan. No photos, no personal touches, nothing that couldn't be abandoned at a moment's notice. Growth is steady, Veda noted, scrolling through projections. But we're hitting scaling issues. We need more capital if we want to expand into international markets. Daniel nodded. We've been bootstrapping too long. Time to consider outside funding. Dangerous territory, Veda warned. Investors ask questions. They want to know who's behind the technology. So we give them a version of the truth. Cal Ricks, brilliant but reclusive developer. You and Tyrese as the public faces. Veda tapped her pen against the desk. There's another option. Merger or acquisition. A larger company with existing infrastructure could help us scale faster. Daniel's jaw tightened. No, we maintain control. Not all companies are run by snakes, Cal. Enough are. He stood, pacing to the window. We find investors who understand our terms. Minority stakes only. Veda studied him. You know, for someone who claims to be forward-thinking, you spend a lot of time looking backward. What's that supposed to mean? It means I pulled your search history from the company network. She held up a hand when he started to protest. Security audit, standard procedure. You've been tracking SinMind's every move. Daniel turned back to the window. Know your competition. They're not our competition. Different market segment entirely. Veda joined him at the window. This isn't healthy, whatever your real name is. Daniel, he said quietly. My name is Daniel Rourke. It was the first time he'd spoken his real name aloud in nearly a year, Veda nodded. Well, Daniel, I have news about your old company. Wasn't going to share it, but since we're being honest, SinMind is in trouble. Serious trouble. Daniel turned. What kind of trouble? The kind that comes from expanding too fast with too little oversight. They've been cutting corners on data security. Now, they're facing class action lawsuits from users whose information was compromised. A complicated feeling rose in Daniel's chest, satisfaction mixed with a strange emptiness. How bad? Bad enough that they're quietly looking for rescue funding. My sources say they've approached Halberton Ventures. Daniel knew the name. Halberton was one of the biggest tech investment funds in the country, known for swooping in to save promising companies from bad management decisions. Halberton might actually do it, Veda continued. Word is they're bringing in a mystery investor, someone with deep pockets and tech expertise. Daniel's mind raced with possibilities. Ooh, unknown. Some wealthy founder looking to diversify. Veda watched him carefully. What are you thinking? Nothing yet, but the gears were already turning. Just processing. Later that night, alone in his apartment, a modest one-bedroom, he rarely spent time in. Daniel made a call to an old contact from his SinMind days. A financial analyst who owed him a favor. Need information on Halberton Ventures, Daniel said when the call connected. Specifically, their rescue funding protocols. Cal, is that you? The voice replied. Man, it's been ages. Can you give me the information? A pause. Yeah, but it'll cost you. Halberton plays things close to the vest. Name your price. After the call, Daniel opened his laptop and created a new document. At the top, he typed, Operation Phoenix. The plan was audacious, possibly insane. It would require perfect timing, significant capital, and a level of deception he wasn't entirely comfortable with. But if it worked, his phone buzzed with a text from Veda. Don't do anything stupid. Whatever you're planning, We should discuss as a team. Daniel smiled. She knew him too well already, he replied. Meeting tomorrow, 8 a.m. Bring Tyrese. I have an idea. Spectre had become the industry's worst-kept secret. Tech blogs speculated about the revolutionary security system that seemed to anticipate threats before they materialized. Larger competitors scrambled to replicate its capabilities without success. What they couldn't know was that Daniel had built Spectre with lessons learned from every mistake SinMind had made. Every dead end his former company had encountered, he'd already navigated around. While they were still trying to solve problems he'd faced 2 years ago, he was 2 years ahead. In the Centaurus conference room, Daniel presented the quarterly results to the team. Growth had exceeded all projections. Their client list now included 3 Fortune 500 companies and dozens of mid-sized enterprises. In short, he concluded, we've outperformed every metric we set. Spectre is demonstrably superior to anything on the market, including SinMind's flagship product. Tyrese raised his hand. Speaking of our friends at SinMind, their latest earnings report just dropped. It's not pretty. Daniel kept his expression neutral. How not pretty? Revenue down 40% year over year. Client attrition accelerating. Stock price hit an all-time low yesterday. Tyrese pulled up the report on the main screen. They're hemorrhaging customers to cheaper alternatives. Even their existing client base is starting to jump ship. To us, Daniel thought, but didn't say. Many of those clients had come to Centaurus after hearing about Spectre's performance. Their burn rate is unsustainable, Veda added. Without new funding, they've got maybe 6 months before they'll need to start laying people off. Daniel nodded. Anything else? Just one thing, Tyrese said. Rumor has it they've got one last shot of pitch to Halberton Ventures and their mystery investor, scheduled for next month in New York. The room went quiet. Everyone knew about Daniel's plan now, dubbed Operation Phoenix by the team. They'd spent weeks debating its merits and risks before finally agreeing to move forward. So, Veda said, breaking the silence. It's really happening. Daniel closed his laptop. It's happening. Tyrese, contact our lawyers. Make sure all the paperwork is in order. Veda, run final security protocols. I don't want any surprises. He stood. The rest of you, keep doing what you're doing. This changes nothing about our day-to-day operations. As the team dispersed, Daniel returned to his office and closed the door. He opened his desk drawer and removed a small box he rarely looked at. Inside was his old wedding ring and a photo of himself from before clean-shaven, smiling, arm around Amber at some company function. The man in that photo was gone. Daniel Rourke of SinMind had been destroyed, reduced to nothing but pain and humiliation. From those ashes, Cal Ricks had risen, and Cal Ricks was about to reclaim what had been stolen. Manhattan stretched below as Daniel gazed out the hotel window. The city pulsed with the same relentless energy he remembered from conference visits years ago. But he was different now, sharper, harder, more focused. He turned from the view to study himself in the mirror. The tailored suit fit perfectly, projecting quiet wealth and authority. His beard was neatly trimmed, his hair styled with precision. Nothing ostentatious, nothing that screamed for attention. Just the calculated appearance of success that a knock at the door broke his reverie. It's unlocked, he called. Veda entered, tablet in hand. Final briefing. The meeting set for 3 p.m. at Halberton's offices. SinMind executives have been told they're meeting with Jason Chun, representing Halberton and an anonymous investor. And Halberton believes they are Daniel Pierce, tech founder looking to diversify his portfolio. Veda handed him an ID card with his photo and the false name. Our friends at Halberton are simply facilitating the introduction. They have no idea about your history with SinMind. Daniel pocketed the ID. What's SinMind's current valuation? Down to $30 million from their peak of $200. They're asking for $40 million in rescue funding for a 60% stake. Desperate, Daniel noted. Very. The lawsuits are gaining momentum. 3 more clients canceled contracts last week. Veda paused. You sure you want to go through with this? We could just watch them implode from a distance. Daniel adjusted his tie. No, this needs to be face-to-face. Revenge serve hot instead of cold. Justice, he corrected. Not revenge. Veda gave him a skeptical look. Keep telling yourself that. She checked her watch. Car will be here in 20 minutes. Tyrese has the legal team on standby. After she left, Daniel sat on the edge of the bed and opened his laptop. A notification showed a new email, the final piece of intelligence from his source inside SinMind. The message contained a single attachment, the pitch deck SinMind would be presenting today. Daniel scanned it quickly, noting the desperation poorly disguised as opportunity. They were positioning the company's troubles as a strategic reset and the lawsuits as temporary setbacks. At the bottom of the email, his source had added, Amber and Jack have been fighting nonstop. Office betting pool on whether they make it to the wedding. So they were still planning to get married. Daniel closed the laptop. That piece of information shouldn't matter, yet somehow it did. The Halberton Ventures offices occupied the top 3 floors of a sleek midtown tower. Daniel was escorted to a private elevator by a polished receptionist who knew him only as Mr. Pierce. The meeting is in the main boardroom, she explained as they ascended. Mr. Halberton himself will make introductions, then leave you to discuss details privately with the SinMind team. Daniel nodded, his pulse steady despite the magnitude of what was about to happen. Perfect. The elevator opened directly into a reception area where Jonathan Halberton, a silver-haired man with the confident demeanor of someone who controlled billions in capital, waited to greet him. Mr. Pierce, Halberton extended his hand. A pleasure to finally meet in person. Daniel shook it firmly. Likewise, I appreciate your discretion in arranging this. Of course, many of our investors prefer to maintain privacy. Halberton led him down a hallway lined with modern art. SinMind's representatives have arrived. They seem quite eager to make your acquaintance. I bet they are, Daniel thought. Just to confirm, Halberton continued, you're primarily interested in their AI security technology? Despite their recent challenges, I see potential beneath the problems, Daniel replied smoothly. Sometimes a company needs to hit rock bottom before it can be properly rebuilt. Halberton nodded approvingly. A philosophy I share. They stopped outside a set of double doors. They're waiting inside. I'll make introductions, then leave you to your discussions. Daniel took a deep breath and followed Halberton into the boardroom. The space was impressive floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the Manhattan skyline, a massive table of polished walnut, leather chairs positioned around it. At the far end, 2 people rose to their feet as the doors opened. Amber. Jack. They looked different than Daniel remembered. Jack appeared haggard beneath his expensive suit, dark circles under his eyes suggesting sleepless nights. Amber maintained her polished exterior, but a tightness around her mouth betrayed her stress. Neither recognized him. Not yet. Mr. Blythe, Ms. Rourke, Halberton began. Allow me to introduce Daniel Pierce. Mr. Pierce has expressed interest in your situation and has the resources to potentially help SinMind navigate its current challenges. Daniel extended his hand first to Jack, who grasped it eagerly. A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Pierce, Jack said. We've heard excellent things. Then to Amber, whose smile didn't reach her eyes. Thank you for considering our proposal. Daniel nodded politely, removing his glasses and placing them on the table. The pleasure is mine. A flicker of confusion crossed Amber's face. Something familiar in his voice, perhaps, but not enough to place it. I'll leave you to your discussion, Halberton said. My assistant will check on you in an hour. As the doors closed behind Halberton, Daniel took a seat at the head of the table, motioning for Jack and Amber to sit as well. So, he began, his voice slipping closer to its natural cadence. Tell me about SinMind's situation. Jack launched into the prepared pitch, highlighting the company's innovative technology while downplaying its financial troubles. Amber occasionally interjected with marketing perspectives and growth potential. Daniel listened silently, studying them. Jack's nervous energy, the slight tremor in his hands when discussing the lawsuits. Amber's calculated smiles and strategic body language leaning forward when emphasizing positive points, sitting back when Jack mentioned problems. And we believe, Jack concluded, that with proper funding and guidance, SinMind can return to its position as a market leader within 12 months. Daniel nodded thoughtfully. Impressive turnaround plan. He paused. Tell me, what happened to the original founder? Daniel Rourke, wasn't it? Jack and Amber exchanged a quick glance. Creative differences, Jack replied smoothly. Daniel was brilliant technically, but didn't have the vision to scale the company properly. He left to pursue other opportunities, Amber added, her voice carefully neutral. I see. Daniel leaned forward. And these lawsuits regarding data misuse, when did those problems begin? Before or after his departure? Jack shifted uncomfortably. The issues arose during the transition period. We've since implemented stricter protocols. Too late for the users whose data was compromised, Daniel noted. We're addressing those concerns, Amber insisted. Our legal team is confident most cases will be dismissed. Daniel nodded again, then stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city. The moment had arrived. He turned back to face them. I'm prepared to make an offer, he said. Hope flashed across their faces. Really? Jack couldn't hide his surprise. That's wonderful news. We'd be very interested in hearing your terms, Amber added cautiously. Daniel returned to the table and sat down. Full acquisition. I'll cover all outstanding debts, pending litigation costs, and provide capital for operational restructuring. Jack's eyes widened. That's more than we were hoping for. There's one condition, Daniel continued. Complete control must be transferred to me. Immediately. Amber's business instincts kicked in. What role do you see for current leadership during the transition? None, Daniel replied flatly. Clean break. Jack leaned forward. That's rather unusual. We have intimate knowledge of the company-client relationships, the same knowledge and relationships that led Sin Mind to its current state. Daniel interrupted. No, I think a fresh start is necessary. Jack and Amber exchanged another look, a silent conversation passing between them. Daniel recognized the calculation in their eyes, weighing their dwindling options against this unexpected lifeline. We need to discuss specifics, Amber said. Compensation packages, equity retention, zero equity retention, Daniel cut in. Generous severance. Non-compete for 3 years. He opened his briefcase and removed a folder. All outlined here. My lawyers have prepared the paperwork. Jack looked skeptical now. This is moving very quickly, Mr. Pierce. Perhaps we should take some time to review with our legal team. Of course. Daniel smiled thinly. Though I should mention my offer expires at the end of this meeting. I have a similar discussion scheduled with Neural Shield tomorrow. Their main competitor. The mention hit its mark. Could you give us a moment to confer privately? Amber asked. Certainly. Daniel stood. I'll step out. 5 minutes should be sufficient. In the hallway, Daniel checked his phone. A message from Veda. All systems go. Legal team, standing by. He paced slowly, listening to the muffled voices rising and falling behind the closed door. Exactly 4 minutes later, it opened. We accept your terms, Jack said, tension evident in his face. Subject to final review of the documents. Daniel re-entered the room. Excellent decision. They spent the next hour reviewing the agreement. Jack asked pointed questions about valuation and transition timelines. Amber remained unusually quiet, studying Daniel with increasing intensity. As they reached the final page, Daniel slid the contract toward them with a pen. Signatures here and here. Jack signed first, his pen scratching across the paper with resigned efficiency. He passed the document to Amber, who hesitated. Something wrong, Ms. Rourke? Daniel asked. She studied his face. Have we met before, Mr. Pierce? You seem familiar somehow. Daniel held her gaze steadily. I don't believe so. I have one of those faces. After another moment, she signed. As she set down the pen, Daniel collected the document and returned it to his briefcase. Congratulations, he said. You've both just been terminated. Effective immediately. Confusion flickered across their faces. What did you say? Jack asked. Daniel sat back, dropping the Daniel Pierce persona entirely. I said you're fired, Jack. Both of you. Effective immediately. Recognition dawned in Amber's eyes first. Daniel, she whispered, but he nodded once. Surprise. Jack's face flushed with anger. This is some kind of joke. Or fraud. These papers won't hold up. They'll hold. Daniel interrupted. My legal team made sure of it. The agreement you just signed gives me complete control of SinMind. My first executive decision is to terminate your employment. You can't do this, Jack sputtered. You're violating our divorce agreement, the NDA. I've violated nothing, Daniel replied calmly. I never disclosed our arrangement to anyone. I simply created a new company, built a better product, and waited for you to run SinMind into the ground, which you did spectacularly. Amber leaned forward. Daniel, we should talk privately about this. There's nothing left to say, Daniel replied. Echoing her words from that night, she'd handed him divorce papers. You made that clear a long time ago. He stood, collecting his briefcase. Security will escort you from the building. Your personal items will be shipped to you. Do not attempt to access company systems or contact clients. Jack stood too, his face red with rage. This isn't over, Rourke. You think you've won, but I have won, Jack. Daniel's voice remained calm. You might want to save your energy for your legal troubles. The SEC is very interested in some of your more creative accounting practices. Jack went pale. Me, Daniel confirmed. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a company to rebuild. Amber reached for his arm as he passed. Daniel, please. He stopped, looking down at her hand, then back to her face. Please what, Amber? Please don't do exactly what you did to me. Please show mercy you never considered. He gently removed her hand. No. At the door, he turned back one last time. You know what the difference is between us? I built something you only knew how to take. With that, he left, closing the door on their stunned faces and the ruins of their careers in the elevator. Alone at last, Daniel let out a long, slow breath. The tension he'd carried for nearly 2 years began to dissolve, replaced by something that wasn't quite satisfaction, but perhaps its quieter cousin, vindication. His phone buzzed with a message from Tyrese. Is it done? Daniel typed back a single word. Yes. The SinMind offices felt strange to Daniel as he walked through them for the first time in nearly 2 years. Most of the faces were new people hired after his departure who had no idea who he really was. Those who did recognize him from company photos or industry events stared in shocked silence as he passed. The executive suite, once his domain, then Amber and Jack's, now awaited his return. He paused outside the door, memories washing over him. So many late nights spent here, believing he was building something meaningful with people he trusted. Daniel pushed the door open. Inside, Jack and Amber waited with their respective lawyers. The atmosphere crackled with tension. Let's keep this brief, Daniel said, taking a seat across from them. My legal team has prepared separation agreements for you both. Standard confidentiality clauses, generous severance considering the circumstances. Jack's lawyer, a sharp-faced woman with calculating eyes, took the documents. My client reserves the right to challenge the acquisition on grounds of misrepresentation. He can certainly try, Daniel replied evenly, though doing so would necessitate my legal team filing counteractions regarding Mr. Blythe's handling of company finances. The forensic accounting report makes for interesting reading. Jack's face tightened, but he remained silent. What about my shares? Amber asked, her composure slipping. I own 50% of this company. You own 50% of a company now worth less than a quarter of its former value, Daniel corrected. The acquisition agreement you signed transfers all equity to the new owner. You'll receive fair market value as determined by independent valuation. This is robbery, she hissed. No, Daniel said quietly. Robbery is manipulating someone into signing away their life's work. This is business. Amber's lawyer placed a restraining hand on her arm. We'll need time to review these documents. Take all the time you need, Daniel replied. But access to company systems and buildings ends today. Security will escort you to collect personal items after our meeting. Jack finally spoke, his voice tight with controlled rage. You think you've won, but you've just made powerful enemies. People in this industry talk. They certainly do, Daniel agreed. They're already talking about how you ran a promising company into the ground through mismanagement and ethical lapses. How you're facing class action lawsuits from users whose data you mishandled. He leaned forward. Your reputation was in tatters before I ever returned, Jack. Don't blame me for the hole you dug yourself. Amber's lawyer cleared her throat. Ms. Rourke would like to request a private conversation with you, Mr. Rourke, to discuss certain personal matters. Daniel met Amber's gaze. Her eyes held a plea he'd seen before when she needed something from him. Always when she needed something. There's nothing left to say. He repeated, the words no longer borrowed, but fully his own. You made that clear a long time ago. He stood. You have 48 hours to sign the agreements. After that, the severance offers expire, and we proceed to litigation. He nodded to their lawyers. Good day. As he reached the door, Amber called after him. Daniel, please. 5 minutes. He paused, hand on the doorknob, then turned back. Why? Because we were married for 8 years, she said softly. Because whatever happened between us, that meant something. Daniel studied her, searching for any genuine remorse in her expression. He found only calculation, the same look she'd worn when presenting him with divorce papers and his stolen company. It meant something to me, he acknowledged. To you, it was a launching pad to what you really wanted. He opened the door. Goodbye, Amber. In the hallway, he found Veda waiting. That went better than expected, she observed. No thrown objects, no security needed. The day's not over, Daniel replied. They walked to what was now his office again. Through the glass walls, he could see Tyrese on the phone, likely updating their legal team. So, Veda said, how does it feel? Getting everything back. Daniel paused, considering. It's not the same company anymore. Too much has changed. He looked around at the unfamiliar faces, the different decor, the subtle ways the place had transformed in his absence. It's not about getting back what I lost. It's about building something better from the ruins. Veda nodded. Phoenix from the ashes. Exactly. His phone buzzed with a notification. A news alert mentioning SinMind. That was fast, he muttered, opening the alert. The headline read, Tech Shocker. Ousted founder reclaims company in surprise takeover. Beneath it, a photo from his earlier days at SinMind, alongside a current picture of the Centaurus team, though his face was conspicuously absent, as Cal Ricks had never appeared in promotional materials. The news was out. There was no going back now. Within hours, the story had spread across every tech publication and business news outlet. Daniel's phone buzzed constantly with messages from former colleagues, industry connections, and reporters seeking comment. Centaurus' public relations team worked overtime crafting the official narrative. Innovative founder reclaims company after improper ouster, plans to merge with his new successful venture to save jobs and restore market position. Daniel sat with Tyrese and Veda in the Centaurus conference room, watching coverage unfold on a wall-mounted screen. The internet is having a field day, Tyrese noted, scrolling through social media reactions. You're either a vengeful villain or a justice-seeking hero, depending on which comments you read. Truth is probably somewhere in between, Daniel replied as Veda's phone chimed. She checked it and whistled softly. SinMind stock just plummeted another 30%. Their board is calling an emergency meeting. How's our stock doing? Daniel asked. Up 17% since the announcement. The market apparently approves of your hostile takeover. Daniel turned away from the screen. It's not a hostile takeover if they sign the papers willingly. Semantics, Veda shrugged. Either way, you now control two companies that need to become one. What's the plan? Integration team starts tomorrow. Core SinMind engineers keep their jobs if they want them. Customer service and sales teams too. We'll phase out their inferior products and transition clients to our systems. And the name? Tyrese asked. SinMind or Centaurus? Daniel considered this. The names carried different weights now. Centaurus. Clean break from the past. His phone buzzed again, a message from an unknown number. He opened it to find a text from Amber. Can we just talk? Daniel stared at the message, his thumb hovering over the delete button. After a moment, he put the phone away without responding. Problem? Veda asked, noticing his expression. Nothing important, he replied. As the day progressed, more news broke. A financial reporter uncovered irregularities in SinMind's reported user numbers under Jack's leadership. Another found connections between Jack and data brokers who'd received unauthorized access to user information the BY evening. Headlines had shifted from Daniel's dramatic return to Jack's potential legal troubles. former Sinmine CEO under investigation for securities fraud. Alone in his office that night, Daniel received an email from Benny, saw the news. Guess you won't be renting my back room anymore. Good hunting, kid. Daniel smiled and typed back. The room's paid through the end of the month. Consider it a thank you. As he prepared to leave, his phone buzzed with another message from Amber. This one longer. I know you hate me right now. Maybe you always will. But we need to talk, Daniel. There are things you don't understand about what happened. Please. Again, he didn't respond. What could she possibly say that would matter now? The next morning brought more developments. Jack's lawyer issued a statement distancing him from the alleged financial irregularities, effectively throwing Amber under the bus by suggesting she had overseen those aspects of the business. Amber's lawyer countered with her own statement, placing all responsibility on Jack. Their united front had collapsed in less than 48 hours, to be the third day. Investors had filed additional lawsuits against both Jack and Amber personally. The SEC announced a formal investigation. 3 more major clients abandoned what remained of Sinmine for competitors. Daniel watched it all unfold with detached interest. He hadn't needed to push them toward destruction. They'd done it themselves, just as he'd predicted. That evening, as he worked late at Centaurus headquarters, his assistant notified him of a visitor. She doesn't have an appointment, his assistant explained, but she insists it's important. Says her name is Amber Rourke. Daniel paused in his typing. Tell her I'm unavailable. She says she'll wait as long as it takes. He sighed. How does she look? His assistant hesitated. Honestly, sir, not good. Daniel debated internally, then made a decision. Give me 5 minutes, then send her in. When Amber entered his office, Daniel barely recognized her. Gone was the polished executive, replaced by someone with smudged makeup, wrinkled clothes, and the haunted look of someone who hadn't slept in days. You're not answering my messages, she said without preamble. I've been busy. Daniel remained seated, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. You have 5 minutes. Amber sat, her movements lacking their usual precision. Everything's falling apart. Jack's lawyers are trying to pin everything on me. The investors are suing. My reputation is ruined. You came here for sympathy? Daniel asked incredulously. I came here because you're the only person who might understand. Her voice cracked slightly. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. How was it supposed to go, Amber? You steal my company, marry the guy you cheated with, and live happily ever after while I disappear. It wasn't like that. Not exactly. She looked down at her hands. Jack pushed for everything: the divorce, the company takeover. He said it was the only way we could be together. Daniel laughed harshly. And you believed him? Or did you just want to believe him because it gave you permission to take what you wanted? I loved him, she said quietly. Or I thought I did. And now he's throwing me to the wolves to save himself. She looked up, eyes glistening. I've lost everything, Daniel. My reputation, my future in this industry, probably my freedom if the SEC investigation goes badly. Sounds familiar, Daniel said coldly. Except you chose this path. I didn't. I know. She wiped at her eyes. I'm not asking you to fix this. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. For what that's worth. Daniel studied her, searching for manipulation beneath the apology. He found only defeat. Why tell me this now? What do you want from me, Amber? Nothing. She stood. Maybe just for you to know that I understand now. What it feels like to lose everything. She moved toward the door, then turned back. For what it's worth, what you've built with Centaurus is impressive. You deserved better than what we did to you. As she reached for the door handle, Daniel spoke. Amber. She paused. I won't help you fight the lawsuits or the SEC, he said. But I'll tell my legal team not to pursue additional actions against you personally. Whatever's coming your way from others, that's on you. She nodded once. Thank you. After she left, Daniel sat in silence, processing the encounter. Her apology changed nothing about what had happened. It couldn't erase the betrayal or the months of hardship that followed. But somewhere deep inside, a knot of anger he'd carried for 2 years had loosened slightly. Not gone, perhaps it never would be, but no longer binding him quite as tightly to the past. He turned back to his work. There was still a company to rebuild. 1 month after the acquisition, Daniel stood on a stage before hundreds of employees, investors, and media representatives. Behind him, a massive screen displayed the new Centaurus logo, phoenix wings wrapped around a digital core. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "Today marks not just a merger of two companies, but the beginning of a new chapter in AI security." The audience, a mix of former SynMind employees and Centaurus team members, watched with varying degrees of interest and skepticism. The integration had not been entirely smooth. Cultural differences between the companies had created friction, and some loyalties remained divided. When I founded SynMind 5 years ago, I had a vision of creating intelligent systems that could protect data as effectively as human security experts. That vision never died, even when my connection to the company was severed. Daniel glanced toward the front row, where Veda, Tyrese, and to everyone's surprise, Benny sat watching. His new foundation, his true partners. Centaurus was born from that same vision, refined through experience and challenge. Today, we're combining the best elements of both companies to create something stronger than either could be alone. He clicked to the next slide, showing the organizational chart of the merged company. Many names from both organizations remained, positioned according to their strengths rather than their origins. Together, we will deliver on the promise that first drove me to this industry: security that thinks ahead, adapts instantly, and protects relentlessly. As he concluded his presentation, the audience rose in applause, hesitant at first, then building to genuine enthusiasm as the vision took hold. Daniel acknowledged them with a nod, then gestured to the stage. "These are the people who helped me rise," he said as Veda, Tyrese, and Benny joined him. "And we're just getting started." The press event continued with technical demonstrations and interviews. Daniel moved through it all with confident ease, no longer the desperate man who had fled San Francisco with nothing but a laptop and wounded pride. Later, at the reception, a young software engineer approached him with nervous energy. "Mr. Rourke," she began, "I joined SynMind 6 months ago, so I never worked with you before. But I've heard the story about what happened." Daniel smiled politely. "And what story is that? How you lost everything and then built something even better from scratch?" She hesitated. "What made you believe you could come back from that? Most people would have given up." Daniel considered her question, searching for an honest answer that wouldn't sound like a motivational poster. "You don't come back," he said finally. "You burn everything down and build from the ashes. Sometimes the greatest opportunities emerge from complete destruction." The engineer nodded slowly. "Like your Phoenix logo. Exactly like that." As she moved away, Daniel felt a presence beside him. Benny, looking uncomfortable in a suit that clearly wasn't his own. "Nice speech," the older man said. "Very inspiring. Load of crap, but inspiring." Daniel laughed. "Which part was crap?" "The part where you pretend this was all about innovation and vision." Benny sipped his drink. "We both know what really drove you." "And what was that?" "Spite. Pure, grade A, industrial strength spite." Benny grinned. "Nothing wrong with that. Some of humanity's greatest achievements came from someone thinking, 'I'll show those bastards.'" Daniel shook his head, amused. "Maybe at first, but it became something more along the way." "Sure it did, because you found people worth building with." Benny nodded toward Veda and Tyrese, who were chatting with investors across the room. "Those two believed in you when you were nobody. Remember that when the success goes to your head." "I will," Daniel promised. "Speaking of building, the offer to join our engineering team stands. We could use someone with your perspective." Benny snorted. "Me, in a corporate office?" I'd last about 20 minutes before telling some vice president where to shove his PowerPoint. He finished his drink. "No, I'm keeping my workshop, but I might consult for the right price." "Name it. I'll think about it." Benny clapped him on the shoulder. "Proud of you, kid. You did good." As Benny wandered off toward the buffet, Daniel's phone buzzed with a news alert. He checked it discreetly. Breaking: former SynMind executives indicted on multiple charges. The article detailed federal charges against Jack for securities fraud, wire fraud, and data privacy violations. Amber faced lesser but still serious charges related to financial reporting irregularities. A photo accompanied the article, a courtroom sketch of Jack at his arraignment, looking nothing like the confident businessman who had once stolen Daniel's company and wife. Daniel put his phone away without finishing the article. Their story was no longer part of his point 6 months later. Daniel stood at the window of his new office in Centaurus's San Francisco headquarters. The view stretched across the bay, bridges spanning the water like neural connections in one of their AI models. The merged company had exceeded all performance projections. Their flagship product, Spectre, now enhanced with the best elements of SynMind's technology, had become the industry's standard for AI security. Their client list included government agencies, healthcare systems, and tech giants who couldn't afford the reputational damage of data breaches. But a knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called. Lisa Chun, their new director of engineering and a former SynMind team lead, entered with a tablet. "Quarterly results are in. We're up 38% year over year. Better than expected," Daniel noted. "How's the team adapting to the new protocols?" There was some resistance initially, but the results speak for themselves. Lisa hesitated. "Actually, that's not why I came by. There's someone here to see you. Says she's an old friend." Daniel frowned. "Who?" Veda Lin came to reply from the doorway as Veda pushed past Lisa with her usual disregard for formality. "Your security systems still need work, by the way. I bypassed 3 checkpoints without proper credentials." Daniel smiled. "Or maybe our security team knows better than to try stopping you." He nodded to Lisa. "Thank you for the update. We'll discuss the results tomorrow." After Lisa left, Veda made herself comfortable in one of his visitor chairs. "Nice view. Much better than that warehouse in Austin. What brings you to San Francisco? I thought you were happy running the cybersecurity division from Texas." "I am, but some things need to be said in person." She studied him. "You've lost weight. Not sleeping again?" Daniel shrugged. "New product launch. You know how it goes. I know you're falling back into old patterns." She leaned forward. "The company's stable. The team is solid. You don't need to drive yourself into the ground anymore." "I'm fine," he insisted. "Are you?" "Because from where I sit, you won the war, but forgot to enjoy the peace." Daniel turned back to the window. "I enjoy the work." "Work isn't life, Daniel." Her voice softened. "When was the last time you did something that wasn't related to Centaurus?" He couldn't remember. The company had consumed him first in its creation, then in its growth, now in its expansion. "That's what I thought," Veda said, reading his silence. "Tyrese and I are worried about you. Even Benny called to check on you, which for him is practically adoption papers." "I appreciate the concern, but nothing," she interrupted. "You've built an empire from ashes, just like you wanted. Now you need to figure out what comes next." For Daniel, not just for the CEO of Centaurus. Before he could respond, his assistant buzzed through. "Mr. Rourke, your 4 o'clock is here. The new intern program candidates." "Send them in," he replied. Veda stood. "Think about what I said. Life's too short to spend it all in boardrooms, even nice ones with fancy views." As she left, a group of eager young faces entered, recent graduates hoping to join Centaurus's prestigious internship program. Daniel greeted them warmly, giving the standard introduction to the company's mission and culture. After the formal presentation, as the group prepared to tour the facilities, one young man lingered behind. "Mr. Rourke," he began hesitantly, "I read about your journey with SynMind and Centaurus. It's incredible how you turned things around." "Thank you," Daniel replied, used to such comments by now. "I'm curious," the intern continued. "What made you believe you'd come back from that, when you lost everything?" The question struck Daniel as familiar. He'd been asked various versions of it many times since his return to prominence. Usually, he gave the polished answer about vision, perseverance, believing in the technology. Today, with Veda's words still echoing in his mind, he decided on honesty. "You don't come back," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "You burn everything down and build from the ashes. The person I was before he's gone. I built something new instead, both in business and in myself." The intern nodded, clearly processing this. "And was it worth it? The cost, I mean." Daniel thought about everything he'd lost and gained. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed him. The new partnerships that had saved him. The company he'd built from nothing. The pieces of himself he'd left behind and the stronger parts he'd discovered. "Yes," he said finally, "but the real challenge isn't in the building. It's in remembering why you built it in the first place. As he in turn hurried to catch up with the tour group, Daniel returned to his window view. The sun was setting over San Francisco, painting the sky in brilliant colors. For the first time in months, he took a moment to simply appreciate it without thinking about work or the next challenge. Tomorrow would bring new problems to solve, new opportunities to explore. The legacy he was building would continue to evolve. But for now, in this moment, Daniel Rourke allowed himself to feel something he had almost forgotten: peace.